Hi, welcome back guys, this is your friend the Momo Fanfics back with the amazing fanfiction. This is Series A, What If Deku Became a Thor? It was the last day of school this year for Aldera Elementary and the kids were about to have an end-of-the-year field trip to the park for pictures with Thor's hammer and the new recently fully grown Yggdrasil tree that was so big that the leaves covered the entire park in a shadow which now required some lighting because the sun no longer shone through the leaves. Every student was going to the park, including the bright-eyed broccoli-haired cinnamon roll Izuku Midoriya, or Deku as everyone in his class called him, to tease and mock him, but no amount of bullying could tear the giant smile from his face. After all, he was going to see and touch the weapon of one of the most powerful heroes in history as well as his second favorite hero after All Might. "All right kids, I want you all to get up and stand in single file while we wait to leave the bus," their teacher said. "Wow, I can't wait to see Stormbreaker. I wonder if anyone will lift it. What about you, Kachan? Obviously someone will be able to lift it, Deku, that person being me. No one here is even half as worthy as I am to lift the hammer. So not only will I be the #1 hero, but I'll be a king as well. That's just how awesome I am. But Kachan, what if someone else lifts the hammer? Don't be stupid, Deku, I'm the only one who can do it, you idiot. Don't you know who I am?" Bakugo shouted before blasting Midoriya in the face. "Oh, ow ow." Midoriya could only hold his face in pain. "Why are you being so mean, Kachan?" Before the assault could continue, the teacher came in with an Asgardian escort who would also teach the kids about some of the history of their people as well as Thor on the way to the hammer. While some kids didn't really care about that stuff, Midoriya was already holding his notebook which he pulled from thin air, one of the few things he did that Bakugo was rather impressed and baffled by. "Children, this is Aina and he will be our escort for the day. Remember to be polite and listen to him when he's talking to you as well as do as he says and when he says." The teacher spoke. Next to her was the Einherjar Sadr. He was a rather tough-looking and rugged man but with a calm and kind smile on his face. He was wearing the usual Einherjar outfit. A black beret on his head with what looked like a regular bulletproof vest but was actually an Uru vest with 2 gold circles on both his left and right pectoral areas. He also had black cargo pants but with Uru-infused gold leg armor covering just barely the top of his knee to the just above his ankle on only the front of his legs. Another thing interesting about this man was that instead of having a gun like most security of soldiers would, he had a rather large greatsword hanging on his back, no doubt also made of Uru. This wasn't super shocking that he had a weapon because unlike most of the world, the Asgardian population didn't really have that many quirked people like the rest of the world. The ongoing theory for this was because they weren't human, so they didn't evolve the same way unless, of course, an Asgardian had a child with a human, but that didn't happen too often because even though they integrated well with the general populace, they were a rather closed-off group of people, not really leaving New Asgard that often. The percentage of quirked people there was only about 2%. On the other hand, New Asgard became somewhat of a safe haven for the quirkless population to integrate to in recent years to get away from bullying. Midoriya's mom once asked if he wanted to go there to get away from it too, but he refused, making the argument that he would be too far from UA when he eventually tried to go there, as well as not wanting to leave Bakugo behind as much as he wanted to meet other quirkless people. "Yes, as your teacher said, I am Aina and I will be showing you around the area before ending the tour by taking you all to the hammer to attempt to lift while a picture is taken. Don't worry though, this won't be just be walking and learning though. Part way through there will be a part where you'll be allowed to walk around and explore on your lonesome to get some sacks and play some games for prizes, and don't worry about money, it's all on us." When he said the last part, the whole bus erupted in cheers. After the explanation, they all got off the bus and started the tour of the park, which basically became an entire Thor monument over the years with statues all over the place which varied from pieces of his armor from over the years and paintings that recreated battles from the invasion of New York to the final battle with Thanos and more. They continued to learn about Thor and Asgard for about 15 to 20 minutes with many things they had never learned about even in history class. After another 5 or 10 minutes, the guide stopped and turned around to look at everyone. "All right, this is the halfway point. Right now you all have free reign to do whatever you want for, let's say the next hour or so. After that, we'll head to the hammer. With that everyone scattered to the games and food except for one kid of course. Midoriya instantly ran back to the statues of Thor, or more specifically the one with his favorite version of Thor's armor from over the years. The gold and blue battle armor from when he fought Gore. There was just something about it that was absolutely amazing to him. Minus the helmet. It wasn't exactly a secret that people thought the helmet looked absolutely stupid, but Midoriya just thought it was kind of silly looking. Now that he had all this info about how Thor's power worked that he never heard before and he had this armor in front of him, he was ready to draw the image. He mixed the blue and gold armor with his short hair when he was on Sakar for the picture. After finishing the drawing he put his notebook away, most likely in another dimension until he needs it again, and was about to head back to play some games and eat until he heard some explosions near the location where the regular kids park was. When he got there he saw Bakugo with his two friends behind him standing over another kid on the ground crying. That was all Midoriya needed to see before he ran to assist the kid like a bat straight outta hell. He threw himself in between Bakugo and the boy on the ground while putting his fists up while shaking. That's mean, Kachan. Can't you see he's crying? If you keep going, I'll never forgive you. Bakugo and his friends snickered at that. Hey, even though you're quirkless, you're still pretending to be a hero, Deku. They then charged at Midoriya and started to beat him down to the ground like the other kid, but even worse. After a while, they all stopped and Bakugo looked down at Midoriya. When are you going to stop trying to be a hero, Deku? You're useless. Midoriya struggled to get back up, but eventually, he did and replied. I'll never stop because I'm going to be a hero like All Might. A hero that makes everybody feel safe with a smile on my face. Bakugo got even angrier at that. Every once in a while Midoriya would stand up to him and talk back, which only ever made him see red. He went to blast him with one more explosion to the face. D-I-I-I-I-I-I-E-E-E. However, the blast never connected. Instead of Midoriya falling back to the ground, he slowly dissolved in a bright green glow before disappearing completely. The kid behind him disappeared as well in the same fashion. Bakugo could only look on perplexed until someone spoke behind him. Well, you're a rather rude and violent little child, aren't you? That made him angrier and he spun around to yell at who said that until he saw who it was, and he was completely frozen with a fear he'd never felt before. Looking back at him sitting crisscrossed with Midoriya and the other child sitting on his legs was an infamous villain turned hero. He wore a dark green leather under armor with gold armor assorted along all the vital parts of his body, such as over his chest, on his hip area and along his arms, with a horned helmet on his head that was gold with green accents along it that went over his ears and ended at his cheeks. He had long dark hair with piercing green eyes and a devilish grin on his face. This was the god of mischief himself, Loki. The day was going by as usual for the god of mischief. He woke up, got dressed, then planted a whole box worth of tacks around Valkyrie's bed and went to make breakfast while waiting for the reaction, which was totally worth it in his opinion, because my god, what a reaction. Loki, I swear to the Allfather that when I catch you, you'll wish Thanos had snapped your neck. That was all he needed to crack a rib in laughter, and when a sword flew past his head he could only laugh even harder. Due to the only current residents in the palace aside from the guards, maids, mages, etc., because of Thor constantly heading to space to assist other planets, Loki has been rather bored. Thor only tends to return home to check up on things from time to time, so the leading role fell to Valkyrie because Loki strangely didn't want anything to do with it. Ha ha ha. Oh come on now Val, let me have my fun. It's been so very boring with Thor away. What else am I supposed to entertain myself with? Not bother me, damn it. Sai, why don't you do your job as the gatekeeper or my assistant like you're supposed to, or even just do literally anything else? Loki's current job was the gatekeeper of New Asgard, much like Heimdall's job once was, but without the Bifrost and without the sword. Instead of the sword, Loki's choice of weapon was Gungnir, the spear that once belonged to his father. He was never seen without it, at least not when he was outside. He had become quite the master at using it, even being able to defeat Valkyrie and Thor at the same time with it, although just barely, and he's never done it since. Well, I can't do too much after you took away my game consoles. Said consoles were a gift from Thor that he quickly got addicted to. Are you fucking 8 years old or something? Possibly, he said with a smug smirk. Sigh, maybe if you did what you were supposed to. By the way, that is one nice bunny onesie you have. Valkyrie stopped and looked down at herself before going bright red and grabbing Loki by the collar of his shirt. You listen here, you little shit, if you tell anyone this I swear to, boom. The entire earth shook from the impact of an unknown source. Loki and Valkyrie thought there was an attack until they saw the bright rainbow glow from outside the window in the middle of the town square. Looks like brother's home. Thank the gods. Now you can bother him and I can get some work done. Well, let us go and welcome him home, shall we? He cast an illusion on himself and Valkyrie to make themselves look presentable and grabbed Gungnir before they headed to the palace door to set out and greet Thor in the plaza. Now outside they walked and talked for a bit before they reached the edge of the plaza. Now at this moment, there was basically nowhere to walk to where Thor was most likely located, which wasn't too unusual, but something seemed off. Loki, do the people seem a little, I don't know, strange right now? The Asgardian leader asked. He looked around for a bit and noticed that yes, the people were acting a bit different than usual when Thor arrived. They usually were loud and excited, and right now they seemed much more somber or upset, and some were even crying. He was about to answer until they heard another loud boom and both looked up to see something flying just about northwest out of the city. Loki started, was that Stormbreaker? Before slowly but surely starting to put the faces to the situation and taking off running towards Thor's landing zone. He pushed and shoved and shouted for people to move, with Valkyrie taking up the rear. As they neared the center of the crowd, Loki shot forward into the Bifrost rune and saw what he was afraid to see. Thor, lying there on the floor covered in blood, which was also cooling. Beneath him, he was breathing heavily and was just staring at the sky away from Loki to where he threw his weapon. Loki couldn't move or speak and had his breath removed from the sight in front of him. Is that you, brother? I figured you would see something wrong with the people as you walked here. You always were the astute one. Thor said, still looking away. How did you know I was here? Loki asked when he kneeled down by his brother. The god of thunder could only chuckle. Brother cough, there isn't a single thing I don't know right now. He turned to look at his mischievous brother, or he would have if he had any eyes. Loki was speechless at what he was seeing in front of him. There was only one of two things that could have done this to Thor. 1. He lost them both in battle with his foe, and option 2 was he did this to himself to achieve the unthinkable. He just needed to see one final thing to check his suspicions. Thor, please show me your neck. Nothing gets past you, does it, brother? He smirked while saying this and lifting his head to show his neck and showing the deep rope mark that wrapped around it. Now first, Loki was shocked that his brother did what he did by taking the path his father did for knowledge and power, which he assumed he did to win against the galaxy-destroying man. Second, he was wondering just how powerful Thor now was with his new gift that came from his sacrifices. And finally, why was he here bleeding to death on the floor instead of just regenerating? Theoretically, he should now be stronger than Odin ever was, with enhanced abilities that their father had, regeneration being one of them. I can answer cough cough all of those questions for you, brother. By the way, you must have done quite the research into the Odin Force to have even the slight knowledge that you have on it. Ha ha, even a small chuckle put him into a coughing fit. During this interaction, Valkyrie just stood back and watched. She had been in a situation like this once before and she knew that this was no place for a third party. She had also called for the healers to come and get the blonde god, but she felt that they would be too late. Thor finally got out of his little fit and continued for his brother. First off, yes, I did travel to Hildstoff and make the sacrifice for knowledge. I needed to remove both eyes unlike our father because I was told that only one was an empty sacrifice. I had to take the path not yet taken. After all, only after you've lost everything, Can you do anything? I have walked the same path as Odin. I have destroyed myself and been reborn. I know the unknowable. I see the unseen. I know why and how you've done your evil deeds. And it matters not. What happens next is all that matters. As for my power, it's unbelievable. Memory manipulation, enhanced senses, teleportation, age manipulation, regeneration, and even the ability to stop time itself. And as for why I refuse to use these abilities, I'm tired. It's as simple as that. I'm tired of seeing my dear friends die either in battle or simply due to age itself as I continue to go on. I wish to be with Mother and Father, as well as Stark, Rogers, Banner, Romanoff, Jane, and the others. The Avengers are no more and the young Avengers are the future with the X-Men at their side. I don't see myself as King of Asgard, nor do I feel worthy of the title or of the many abilities of the Rune King. He looked to Loki with a tear somehow coming out of his socket. He was crying as he grabbed his brother by his shoulder to bring him closer to him. Listen, brother, and listen well. You will secure the true King of Asgard, I have seen it. Within the week Stormbreaker will land in Mustafu of Japan. It will land in a park where none shall lift it unless proven worthy, and I know who that will be. A young boy with grand dreams and ambitions yet without the means to make them come true. His life will have been unsavory and gasp. He was starting to slow down and could barely speak. His words were starting to come out as barely whispers while he gasped for air. Loki got closer to hear him clearer, and for what he knew was going to be the last time. He could just tell the last breath was coming soon. Small words, brother. Save your breath and just give me something small. I'll find things out from there. Green hair, gasped Shy, rather excitable, and gasped bruised. He whispered, green hair, you mean like a dye job? Ha ha, cough, nope. All natural like the mother. Also, help, gasp the gasp, other gasp as well. Good friend, help, what do you mean? You'll gasp, see. Sorry, I don't have cough an exact day, I'm just cough, gasp, tired. I think I'm gonna go ahead and, Loki understood. He didn't want to, but he did. All he could do was look down and sigh. At least he had something to do now, and that was to find the new king. He looked back into his brother's empty sockets with a determined but sad look. I'll find him, brother, don't you worry. It might not be this year or the next, but I have a little under 4,000 years left in me anyway. I'll train him, and teach him, and he then noticed that he wasn't even talking to his brother anymore. He was talking to his corpse. He'd finally succumbed to his wounds. He was dead. Only a few moments after his death the healers had finally arrived. They had an extremely hard time maneuvering the crowd, which had grown immensely during the interaction. And Loki just sat there with his brother in his arms and tears in his eyes while he wept. It had finally happened. He has lost every single member of his family and was truly and utterly alone. Well, you're a rather rude and violent little child, aren't you? Loki spoke to the violent blonde boy in front of him. He could see the angry blonde boy was frightened. After all, he initially revealed in that reaction many years ago, but strangely the fear had a hint of anger as well, as if he despised being looked down on even if it was physically. He could only think, how does someone this young get a personality like that? Interesting. I didn't know they started making villains so young, he said with his famous grin still on his face. Bakugo stopped and took in what the god said to him, as if the man had just said the sky was pink and the grass was blue. After everything that was said, sunk in all of his fear was replaced with anger. What did this man just call him? Couldn't he see he was pure hero material? How dare he say that to his face? What the hell did you just fucking call me? I'm going to be the #1 pro hero, you hear me? And I'm also gonna lift that damn hammer axe and rule your dumbass, you got that? Very proud indeed. Well, I suppose I should enact punishment on the child. But what? He needed to think for a moment. Well, this is a bit far but suitable, I believe. Quote, well, about Stormbreaker, I'm afraid you just won't be able to try and lift it today. And why the hell not? Well, you see, there was a change of plans. It just wouldn't be possible for everyone in your school to try and lift it today, so we've decided that each class would make a vote to choose who gets to make an attempt while the rest of the class stood behind them for the picture. And because of your cruelty to these children and this one's bravery." He motioned to Midoriya. "I've decided to let him make the attempt." This wasn't a complete lie. It was true that they had miscalculated just how large this school was. However, they hadn't made a decision on how to move forward. In some ways, he was talking nonsense, but he had already started making the arrangements on the idea that he came up with at the top of his head via an illusion of himself speaking with the director of the event. "What? Why the hell would you choose that quirkless nerd?" "Quirkless, huh?" He locked up that information for later. "Because he didn't decide to bully those weaker than him." Before the boy could reply, he took in his situation and looked at the boys on his lap. On his right leg was a little boy that had to be about 12 or 13 years of age, with a bush of green hair on his head and bright emerald eyes with freckles. He was currently staring at his savior with his mouth hung open and eyes popping out of his skull. He had the green he was looking for. Now to look at the other aspects. He was quite excitable, having met a rather popular hero, and while anybody definitely would be, he could feel that this boy was quite a bit more so. Second, by the looks of the small scars as well as burns and bruises, his life has most definitely been unsavory. Now to ask a question. "What's your name, little one?" "Aizuku mi Midoriya, sir." He leapt off the god's leg and pulled out a notebook. Loki blinked. Where in the fresh hell did he pull that out of? C-C, can I please have your autograph? "Well, but of course, I will, Midoriya. I suppose you know who I am then?" All of the nervousness that was in the boy disappeared in an instant as he went to answer. "Of course I do. You're Loki, the god of mischief and brother of Thor. You're known for being one of the most cunning villains that the Avengers had ever fought before becoming an Avenger during the Infinity War against Thanos, when he wanted to get the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of all life, where blah 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 blah." Pretty soon everything the kid was saying started to blend into one big intangible sentence. Loki continued to sign the notebook and read the entry about him as the young boy told the entirety of his history from villain to anti-hero to hero, and inside he was feeling rather smug at the fact that someone liked him this much, but on the outside. Blah 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 blah. How does he even breathe? Looking back at the notebook, there was a rather amazingly drawn picture of the god with little facts about him next to it, such as hair and eye color, height, and so on. It even had a massive description of his abilities with theories of how they worked and even possible ways to use his offensive spells that he had started using in recent years more effectively and powerfully. Even though it was magic and not a quirk, this boy could pick apart all his strengths and weaknesses. If this is the one, then he's not an idiot at least. This is actually a bit terrifying. Quote, "What about you? Are you going to be a hero as well?" The boy's excitable face slightly faltered. "Well, yeah, I want to be a hero too, but..." "Shut up, Deku. You're a quirkless little nerd that will never be a hero, you hear me?" Loki remembered his brother's words. A young boy with grand dreams and ambitions, yet without the means to make them come true. That's check 2 possibly. Now for one final test, the hammer axe. But first, he needed to teach this blonde brat some things. "Young man, might I ask, what does being quirkless have to do with anything?" "It means he can't be a hero without one. There never has and never will be a quirkless hero. Young man, you do know that the Avengers, the first ever heroes in the world, were quirkless, right? Did they not teach you that in school?" "That's bull. Of course, they had quirks. They could never have become heroes without them. That's what we were taught. The only exceptions were you and your brother. What is this school teaching these kids at this school? I'll have to look into this." Quote, "Young man, I can personally assure you that they were all quirkless." Stark was simply a very intelligent man in a suit. Rogers was a strong man simply made stronger with science, with Banner being much of the same yet overly exaggerated. I'm sorry, but quirks didn't arrive in the world until nearly 100 years later. Also, before you say anything, the X-Men were mutants. They didn't have quirks either because they still have the extra toe joint just like a human quirkless plus the X gene which makes them even more different. All Bakugo could do with this information was sit and let it all in for the moment. There was no anger or attitude, he was simply thinking it all through. This was not some random person telling him this was a bona fide historical pro-hero that lived through it all in the beginning. With that, he really had no reason not to believe him. However, anger did eventually give in because if this was true then that would mean that Deku was right this whole time. He was constantly trying to tell Bakugo that the original heroes were quirkless, but he just figured that he was lying to himself to try and make it seem like he had a chance to become a hero, but if what Bakugo is now hearing was true then that would mean that he actually did have a chance. This made the blonde start to seethe because with Deku right that meant he was wrong and he is never wrong. He figured he should do some research when he got home. The broccoli-haired boy looked up at the god and looked as if he was about to cry. Quote, ? Just Loki is fine young one. What is it? Does that mean you think that sniff that I can be a hero even without a quirk? Young man, I promise that if you train and work hard enough, you will surely become an amazing hero. This notebook here already shows that you have an astoundingly knowledgeable mind, which means you're already halfway there, my friend. He said while returning the now signed notebook. The boy collapsed with tears from the answer while holding the notebook close to his chest. It was evident that no one had ever said that to him before, aside from his parents at least. The other child on the god's left walked up to the boy to console him while the blonde looked like he was absolutely disgusted but said nothing because of the thin ice he was on. The question didn't exactly come as a surprise all the way out here. Japan tended to have a much harsher outlook on the quirkless populace than the rest of the world. It wasn't every person in Japan. There hasn't been a quirkless hero since the hero school became the norm around the world, and said hero school's entrance exams are extremely quirk-focused and combat quirk-focused especially. Because of this, many promising heroes have been forced to make a change in their future careers. There have been many protests about this fact, and now in America, they have some schools that specialize in specific hero types: combat, rescue, underground, and support. The only exception is Xavier's school, which only accepts mutants. It's also the only school that accepts mutants other than UA, which decided to allow mutant participants into the hero course this past year, much to the anger of the people that still see them as second class. Rumor is that UA is also in talks to start accepting quirkless participants in the coming years as well. Sadly, if this boy thinks he's had it bad, then he should be glad he isn't a mutant. In comparison, quirkless people are treated like royalty while mutants are still hated with a fury unimaginable, even though they even have a majority population than them. However, due to the similar treatment, the quirkless and the mutants tend to have an understanding with each other, but there's still some slight aggression. And now the boy on his left. He was still talking to the crying boy with a small smile, and they seemed to be hitting it off. The boy had dark black hair that seemed to have grown naturally into a long mohawk ending with a ponytail at the back end and piercing blue eyes. He as well looked up more calmly with a smile on his face. He had small fangs on both sets of teeth on the left and right sides. Another interesting detail was that he was no longer crying like he was on the floor. His eyes weren't even red, as if he was faking being in pain. That detail wasn't the most interesting part though. The interesting part was that the burns and bruises that were once there are now completely gone, having healed in moments. He must have a healing quirk or something. How about you? What's your name? I'm Akihiro. What about you, Akihiro? Do you want to be a hero? The boy seemed to be in thought for a moment and was about to answer before once again a loudmouth spoke out. How the hell could he be a hero? He's as weak as they come. Besides, a real hero doesn't cry when they get knocked down, they get the hell back up. A comical tick appeared on Loki's head. He just had to open his big damned mouth again. Quote, I was crying because I was trying to appeal to your damn humanity, but seeing as how that only made you laugh harder, I guess I showed you don't have one hubbub. The kid said to the blonde without missing a beat and with an irritated growl. The last word he used also seemed similar to Loki, but for the life of him, he just couldn't say why. What the hell for? HMPH, I was bored. Plus I wanted to see if your hair was real or just a god-awful wig, he replied with the grin of a predator. You mother. Enough, the both of you. I don't want any more yelling or squabbling, okay? Also, we'll all be walking back to the Hammeraxe together since you can't be left here unsupervised apparently. Anyway, Akihiro, I believe you were going to answer me. He seemed to ponder for a moment. I don't really know. My father is a huge hero. He has been for years, but we don't particularly get along right now. He's kinda made the word hero go pretty stale in my mouth, at least for most of 'em anyway. At the moment I really wouldn't make a good one. I tend to only help people if it benefits me at the moment and then I move on. Hey, I guess kinda like my dad in the beginning. Midoriya got out of his happiness fit for a moment when the info went into his head. Your dad's a hero. Which one? Do I know him? What rank is he? When was his debut? How old is he? What's his quirk? Wah! He was stopped however by the boy whose father they spoke of via hand over mouth. Geez bud, cool your jets. That's more info than I'm willing to give out at the moment. Maybe after we get to know each other. He looked down at his watch and started to get up. Which will have to be at another time. I gotta go now, so I'll catch ya later. What? You gotta go already? And how will we see each other again? I didn't tell you where I live. The lad's new friend was farther now because he was running. Don't worry about it. I got your scent. So he has an animalistic type of quirk then. The greenette thought for a bit before getting his head tapped on. He looked up to see the Emerald God lightly smirking at him. He looked at the other three boys as well. It's about time all of us go as well, you four. The event will be happening soon and it'd be best if I, the coordinator, wasn't late, so let's be off, shall we? He quickly pointed at the three other boys in front of him and Midoriya with a stern look. Also, I'll be watching you three, so you get in front of me. I'll be having a chat with your teacher about this incident. Bakugo opened his mouth to try and shout at Loki again but was interrupted. And before you even think about talking back to me, you should remember that quirk use outside without a license is illegal above the age of 6. I could easily take you all to the police station as D-class villains. The fear that was once gone was now back with a vengeance for Bakugo. Am me, a villain? And know that that's total fucking bull. I haven't done anything except show the fucking twerp his place. This shit's lucky he's a god or I'd have blown his goddamn head off. Not really though. After all, Loki was one of Bakugo's favorite heroes because of how he fights. Ruthlessly like Wolverine, his second favorite hero after All Might. Due to his brutal nature and literally deadly fighting style, Bakugo picked up that type of personality and wanted to become an origin hero of Wolverine, but because of his quirk, he had to give up on that. But that's beside the point. He's idolized heroes since he was able to even think, and because of doing what was right, he might never become one. Insult to injury, he told Deku that he could become a hero. But the worst part, he'll never have a chance to lift the Hammeraxe and prove his superiority because there were too many people, and because Loki saw what he did, the god chose Deku instead. This day couldn't get any worse. Quote, I'll also be telling your teacher what has happened and making sure you get proper punishment. Never mind, now I'll have bullying on my record. The teacher has never done anything before, but he'll be forced to because a hero said so. Fuck. Quote, Stormbreaker testing ground. After getting the 4 kids to the back of the line with his class and almost pulling his hair out to have the teacher write up Bakugo to the point that he considered threatening an investigation into the school. Although that might happen anyway. Those children's behavior towards the quirkless is concerning at this age. I should bring this up at the next meeting with Toshinori and Mirai. Quote, after all, Loki was a hero and he wasn't in Japan just for the ceremony. He was personally sought after by All Might because of his superb stealth for a mission. There have been inklings going around about the MLA possibly returning. Not enough to really do anything, but enough to possibly cause some trouble in the future. And since Loki tended to look into these things very thoroughly, things were starting to look up for the investigation. The quirkless hate from basically all of the students while taking Midoriya back, the teacher trying to refuse to write up Bakugo due to it only being roughhousing, despite the bruises proving otherwise, and the overall coldness towards the green-haired child from even the adults led Loki to believe that the Aldera school district needed to be looked into. Back to the event, Midoriya's class was placed in the back of the line and was informed of Midoriya being the one to make the attempt with Stormbreaker, which was met with less than ideal looks and hushed words from his classmates, followed by the boy attempting to give it to someone else only to be shut down by the god. I swear this boy is way too willing to give up the already thin ground he barely has. I hope he doesn't become too altruistic in the future. It's a good type of person to be, but as a pro, he'll need a bit more backbone. Quote, currently, the line was indeed moving with one student from each class making the attempt with Stormbreaker, with Loki watching from nearby when he got a phone call. Ring ring. He looked at his phone and noticed that it was coming from Sir Night-Eye. Perfect timing. Quote, he answered, believing it to be an update on the case. Hello, Night-Eye, how are why? His eyes bulged and he turned around to now speak in a more hushed tone. What do you mean All Might was almost killed? Kurashiki Central Hospital, Tokyo. It's exactly as it sounds. You know who ripped out basically half of his internal organs. One whole lung, half his stomach, a kidney, and half of his intestines. The only reason he isn't dead is because we found him 5 minutes later with recovery girl in tow with blood covering his hands, after he crushed his skull with his bare hands. What's his condition? Loki asked over the phone in a hushed tone. Still stable, for now. They can't get him any replacement organs since he's currently at the bottom of the list, so they're trying to fix him up so that he can at least wake up soon. He's been in the operating room for 50 hours straight though, and I'm getting worried. I finally decided to call you after sitting on my ass doing nothing for the whole damn time. I can guess why as well. You want to see if my healing magic can do anything to help, correct? Can it? Unlikely. Even we Asgardians can't regrow organs, but I guess I'll see when I get there, but you need to give me some time. I believe I've found the one I'm looking for and I need to see if I'm correct. Well, that's good for you. Too bad, from what I saw Toshinori will need to start looking for one soon. What do you mean from what you didn't? I had to. I had no choice. He's hanging from a thread here and when he wakes he needs to know if he can keep going. That's not your choice. There was a pause on the other end. Most likely from Loki looking around from his shout. You don't get to make that choice. You know how he'll be pissed when he wakes up and you tell him this. After I explain what if he lets you explain before he up and walks out, and don't think he won't, he's stubborn like that. He will understand the severity of the situation and we can start to look for a successor. The future can't be changed and I refuse to watch him die alone in the middle of nowhere because he decided to keep working with an injury like this. Sigh, just don't be too surprised when he loses it. Also, put Gran Torino on the phone. I know he's there because he's got anxiety about having to go through this again and you two hate each other, so I know you aren't consoling him. Sigh, you could just say you don't wish to speak with me, Loki, but I'll pass you over. Before I do though, I'd just like you to know that I truly just wish for the best for Toshi. I know Mirai, truly I do. Sorahiko, make sure his dream comes true. All Might had tears blanketing his face as he was forcefully pulled from the fight by Gran Torino. Master. MAAASSSSTEERRRR. Nana pointed to them and began to speak as Gran Torino continued to fly away. All Might, I'm counting on you, she finished with a close of her fist. Ma ass Saint TRRR. All Might shouted again as Gran Torino continued to keep flying while refusing to look behind him with tears in his eyes. Nana looked back at the monster in front of her. Thank you for such a wonderful comedy, he said with a sick smile as he raised his hand. BOOOOOOOOOOOM. Gran Torino woke with a start and almost fell out of the hospital chair. He took a moment to relax and slow his heart. I haven't had a dream about that moment so vivid in years. He looked up to the ceiling with a somber look on his face. He did it, Nana, but was it worth it? Will he even be able to keep going and continue being the pillar the three of us dreamed of? His health is more important, of course, but you know him. He just can't sit the hell down for even a moment. He looked down at his feet. Please God, don't make me go through this again. My heart just can't take it anymore. He noticed that his right hand was shaking, so he gripped it with his left while taking in and letting out deep inhales and exhales. After a moment his heart slowed and he relaxed, but just barely. At the sound of footsteps, he looked up to see Night Eye walking towards him with an exhausted look. We've both been up for just over 2 days straight. I never thought I'd ever sympathize with the prick, but here I am. What is it, Mirai? It's Loki. I told him the gist, but he and I never really got along in the first place, so the conversation went sour fast. Well, when you put two people so similar in the same room, they're bound to butt heads with each other. That's why the saying is opposites attract and not the other way around. Give it here, I'll chat, and you nap. We don't see eye to eye much either, but I'd rather not watch you collapse on the floor. For once in both of their lives, Night Eye didn't argue and simply handed Gran Torino the phone before sitting in a chair across from the old-timer and closing his eyes. Gran Torino then simply put the phone to his ear and released a rather out-of-character. Hello, Torino, hello. How are you? I'm fine, you old fart. Nothing to worry about. Toshi'll be up and at 'em in no time flatten. Sorahiko. For about 15 to 20 seconds there was silence until finally, with tears in Gran Torino's eyes, he spoke. I'm scared, Loki. I'm absolutely terrified that once again I can't do anything and I'm going to lose my closest, dearest friend again. I know the feeling well, Hiko. I've made so many irreplaceable friends in the past 200 or more years that passed from old age or from harrowing while I continue to go on. Does the feeling ever go away? I wish. My brother's death has left a permanent mark on my soul. Just like my father's death. Of course, family hurts more, but the difference is hard to separate when friends basically become family. Yay. By the way, I heard that recovery girl was there. I guess this means that she knows now. Yay. She was always supposed to, but things happened and we all just figured it wouldn't be necessary. Will your shins ever be the same? That made Gran Torino laugh. Not a sad laugh or a small chuckle. It was the best he'd laughed in over 2 whole days. Somewhere in Musudafu, Akihiro was currently heading back to his home after his excursion to the park and thought. The blonde-haired boy and Izuku both smelled oddly of caramel. Izuku said he was quirkless, so it wasn't because of him. In comparison, the blonde bastard reeked of it. I assume that he is a constant tormentor of Izuku then. Those explosions are no joke for his age. Although I healed nearly instantaneously, I doubt that Izuku has that pleasure. While he thought about this, he stopped across the street from a bank. He was putting his earbuds on as he thought, oh yay, I've gotta head to the bank for Romulus. Ice Cube. It was a good day. Kachan was what he called him, right? So they're close, or at least were at one point. He decided to think about it later as he crossed the street with his music on max. As he crossed the street he thought something smelled off. Not like something stinks, but as if there was someone dangerous nearby. He stopped for a moment and looked towards the bank where the smell was coming from and squinted his eyes. After a moment of looking, he moved again toward the bank and headed inside. It smells even stronger than before. Who the hell could be here? I should get this finished quickly or I'm never going home. When he walked into the bank he saw more of a crowd of people than a bank. It's like a damn mosh pit in here. Although it is a Friday. The Mohawk boy moved to the ATM because he absolutely refused to wait in that line. Of course, he wasn't the only one with that idea, because no sane person would want to go in that line. Although apparently, his sanity is debatable due to a lack of empathy and morality. In addition to his impulsiveness and tendency to lie, all topped with the fact that he knows what right and wrong are and that he just doesn't care. At least the doc gave it to me straight. I hate when they beat around the bush. After what was still quite a long time and 2.5 loops of his favorite song, he finally reached the ATM when Bang bang bang. Gunshots rang behind him. A man with a mask over his face had shot a gun from the middle of his hand into the air as people screamed except for about 10 others including Akihiro. So that was the smell. Robbers, huh? About 10 of them if those 9 people who didn't react or anything to go by. I should hurry up so they don't slow down my day any more than it has been. Besides, this ain't my fucking problem. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Me and my friends here simply want to take the money from the bank and all you fine people. I would prefer no violent actions to take place here today, so please cooperate and lower to the floor. Asahi, you collect and everyone else watch around. I'll deal with all the teller areas. As he worked through the ATM he figured they wouldn't disturb him, so he went at his own pace. Intel. Shit, I forgot about the ATMs. Hey, Suji, break them open won't you? Damn, can't this crappy machine hurry up? Even if they weren't coming this way, I swear these fucking things run off of XP. Also, are these morons using their real names? After a moment the one named Suji turned the corner. He seemed to have thousands of blades coming out of his body aside from his head from the neck up. Hey, you, didn't you fucking hear the boss? The man expanded one of the blades on his forearm to the size of about a katana with the tip going past his clenched fist and pointed it at the boy. Get the fuck down. He put the blade right on Akihiro's neck and sliced the wires to his earbuds, cutting off the music. I know you're just a dumbass kid, but even you should know when to listen to orders. He wasn't listening to the man though. He was looking down at the sliced wires of his earbuds. I'd genuinely rather not hurt you, kid. The man stated while pushing the blade closer, causing the kid's neck to slightly bleed. One last time. Sit, do, slice. He was cut off when his arm fell off due to a clean cut from his bicep. He was completely speechless in shock as he watched the boy move in a blink and take off his arm, which was bleeding profusely now. Akihiro had his arm raised above his head to the left and a shine came off his hand. The robber looked and saw 3 blade-like protrusions, with 2 coming out of the middle of his index and pinky knuckles and a curved one coming out from his wrist. And no fucking way. Gee, get the hell away from me. He shouted as he fell over. The commotion got the attention of some of his allies. They too were shocked about seeing one of them on the ground missing an arm and scrambling in fear. When they looked up they saw why. The boy was just standing there with his left arm still raised. His mouth was thin but his eyes held pure rage. They cloud swear that his eyes were glowing red. I was just going to make a withdrawal and leave, but you guys just pissed me off. He lowered his arm and straightened up before. Shink. 3 more claws came out of his right hand. That was my first gift in 3 years. Sure, they were fucking cheap, but that ain't the point. One of the goons finally spoke. Gee guys, doesn't he seem kinda familiar? Those claws. Yay. There's no doubt. This brat has gotta be Wolverine's kid. I mean, look at him. Another replied. Who cares? He just hurt one of us. Blast him. One more spoke in anger while he pointed his shotgun at the kid. No way. Bang bang bang. He shot 3 shells into the boy, with the first going through the left shoulder causing him to step back and a massive blood splatter on the wall, another going into his stomach and out the back, and the final one going through his left eye, which blew out the back of his head and caused him to collapse backward on the floor. There. The shooter lowered his gun with a grin. What was the fucking problem? He didn't even have an adamantium skeleton. He looked back to his partners. Bro, don't you know? Wolverine has the ability to. When one of the robbers' face fell, the rest turned to see what made him speechless. The boy who was just shot dead was now hunched forward with 3 claws embedded into the skull of the robber on the floor. He swung his arm out to the right instead of pulling out and sliced the skull nearly in 2. Blood landed on the wall along with brain chunks and an eyeball. I ain't my father. The raged boy spoke out while he began to stand up. As he did, the robber saw the hole in the shoulder of his shirt, but the flesh underneath had healed along with his stomach. The most disturbing part, however, was that when he looked straight at them they could see his brain healing as well before a new eye took place. I'm stronger. A metal skeleton would stunt my growth, so I use sheaths on my claws. Also, I use proto-adamantium. Now go to hell, he shouted with a lunge at the man who shot him. The man raised his gun again and fired while shouting. We still outnumber you, kid. Akihiro took one slug to the arm again, but this time he didn't budge. He continued towards the man and slid on his legs under the other slugs before he stopped himself with his feet and quickly threw himself arms first and sent himself plus the gunner flying while also having sunk his claws in his chest. When they finally landed, he pulled his claws out and began to literally tear the man apart by slashing through his chest and arms that he raised to defend himself as he screamed in pain. He would lose both his arms while attempting to defend himself before he started to have trouble breathing. His lung was cut in half and was starting to collapse. He could no longer scream as he just lay there in pain as the entire bank watched in horror, unable to move and help. Finally, the attacker retracted his knuckle claws to reorient his pals flat toward the man's face and pierced his skull with his wrist claw, having them go through his eyes and out the back of his head. There was no more screaming, just the heavy breathing of the boy who was over the dead man. That kid is a monster. One of the robbers spoke in fear. There's only 8 of you. He spoke with a maniacal grin on his face, and Ho's body was covered in blood, muscle, and organ bits. You're going to need more than that.